Hello, everyone. Good day, hello, welcome, whatever part of the world that you're in. Welcome to another SudokuCon Twitch stream. I am particularly excited today because I get to host and chat with two great luminaries in the Sudoku community. We have Clover in the middle and Philip Newman on the left, who are biggies in the gas community, gas field, and we're going to have a discussion about how to make a good gas. So welcome to you both. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here.
Well, I know how to make gas. I'm not sure I know how to make good gas yet, Tallcat.
Well,
I'm still working on it.
Well, we're all growing and learning.
One of those lifetime to master sort of things, right?
Yeah, exactly. Can anyone in the chat tell us if the audio is correct, just before we dive too far into things? I know I've had issues with solving that before. Everyone sounds good. Okay, great. Okay, so yeah, again, welcome Clover and Philip. It was great, before we started, it was actually great to meet you both in person at SudokuCon in April.
Likewise.
And
I can confirm Tallcat is a very, very tall cat.
Yeah, I
felt very short at SudokuCon.
Yeah, I think one of my overriding memories is there was this great moment where I think Philip was talking with Tristan, Zadamath's husband Tristan, and I walked over, and then Glum Hippo walked over, and Philip just was like, well, I suddenly feel short. But
I'm not short, but I was there.
Yeah. So I guess before we dive too much into what makes a good gas and what comprises it, gas itself, I think, started as a project about 4 or so years ago, if I remember correctly, and was started by Clover. So do either of you want to give a summary of just how it started, why it started, what your thoughts were?
I think I've been drafted to do that.
I can summarize the first 10 days of gas, Philip, if you want to do the repair. So, yeah, June 2021, if I'm not mistaken. Philip will probably tell you the exact date off the top of his head in a second. June 7th, 2021. 7th, okay. I had been in the online puzzle community for not that long, maybe a year or so at that point. And one thing that I had run into a number of times, really almost a personal frustration, was I guess what you could call like difficulty inflation, or like rating difficulty inflation, where the puzzles that got attention in the community were, and this makes perfect sense, very often the ones that people ended up having to invest the most into in order to solve. Because of course, naturally, if you are going to sit down with a puzzle for 4 hours and sink your teeth into it, you're probably, one, going to walk away very quickly if it turns out to be terrible, but you're not going to invest that amount of time. So the puzzles that kind of are very, very difficult, very crunchy, that end up getting attention are often like the best examples. And two, there's almost the Stockholm syndrome effect, where if somebody is going to invest that amount of energy into a puzzle, they are more likely to go around and kind of promote it heavily, partially just out of joy at solving the puzzle, but also out of, the sense of triumph conquering it. And this had led to this dearth of approachable puzzles kind of getting attention in the community, kind of high quality, approachable puzzles. And I started publishing one puzzle a day in the Sudoku Recommendations channel. I believe I was living overseas in the Netherlands at the time. I wasn't doing a whole lot. I wasn't working there, so I kind of had a lot of extra time to set puzzles, focusing on things that could be solved in the neighborhood of 10 minutes or so, that showcased one or two well-known Sudoku variants, typically, and that were based around kind of simple but elegant ideas that could pretty quickly be spotted by somebody who had read the rules and understood the rules, but might have no real familiarity beyond that. So, no outside knowledge needed, no real puzzle experience needed, just the only tricks were things that you could kind of see just from looking at the puzzle in the first place. And I lasted about 10 days, and two things happened in the course of those 10 days. One thing that happened is I flew back to America, and I somehow managed to keep this daily puzzle series and Sudoku recommendations going over the course of, packing, moving, international flight. But I was wearing out. Like, if it was just me, gas would not have lasted very far beyond those 10 days. And originally I intended it for it to be maybe like a month-long series. And two,
wow,
it gathered so much.
It's 4 years later.
I absolutely did. Yeah. 4 years later, my month-long series is still going strong. And two, it started causing absolute chaos in the sleepy little Sudoku recommendations channel, to the point where people chiming in and saying, this was my time, I want a little reward, because I was giving out like little emoji rewards just to make people who had solved them smile. Like, it wasn't anything deep. It wasn't the party hats thing was just a whim that I had. It wasn't something that was really well planned out. It was just a way to interact with the community and be a little fun and silly and give people a little gift for solving my puzzle. And this got such an unexpected, unprecedented response that it was drowning out people who were using the Sudoku recommendations channel for the things that it actually was designed to be used for, which is recommending Sudoku for people to solve. So after about 10 days, the mods of the CTC Discord decided that it needed its own channel and it needed a team. And Philip, I'm going to let you go from here because you are a better historian than I am.
Yeah, so at the time, Sudoku recommendations was primarily for people recommending other people's puzzles. Often on LMD, I solved this puzzle and it was really cool, you should try it, that sort of thing. There were a couple of us that were posting our own puzzles there. And I was one of those. I had a couple of different classic series at the time. One of them was the pie puzzles that I used to do. I had generated all of the possible classic Sudoku with symmetrically placed digits of pi in order.
As one does.
I had been posting, yeah.
Philip, I actually didn't know that. I didn't know that you had actually generated the full set and were curating it. I thought that you were setting these by hand, like on the fly.
I set one or two at the beginning by hand.
That's incredible.
In fact, one of the very first Sudoku puzzles I set was a pie puzzle that I dedicated to my wife, whose birthday is Pi Day. Yeah. It's a very pretty puzzle, and it's very, very easy. I think I might have even posted it in Gas. I don't remember for sure. Anyway, yeah, I generated all of them. I wrote a little script. I have a big spreadsheet that has all of them listed in it. And I had been going through curating, like Clover said, for a while. I started initially when I was making Sudoku, posting them on a forum, and I didn't join the Discord until I sent in Tattooing Sunset. And so once I was on the Discord, I was still posting on the forum, but I was cross-posting on Sudoku recommendations. So I had Pie Mondays, and I had Tattooing Tuesdays. I think for a little while I had Fishy Fridays. I wasn't doing the whole week or anything. But when I started setting, I was very focused on very hard puzzles. Puzzles with interesting classic techniques. A few easier ones every now and then. But I was one of the main people posting in Sudoku recommendations, period. And I was posting my own puzzles. So when the mods decided Gas needed its own channel, I got invited kind of as a, Clover's been taking over the channel and you're one of the people posting there. Would you be interested in participating in this daily thing?
Well, I think it also had something to do, Philip, with the fact that you had demonstrated that you were one of the few community members who was able to consistently publish on like such a frequent, regular basis, high quality stuff and kind of like nail a particular spec. Yeah. So don't sell yourself short. Like some of it is because we were taking over your channel.
I was able to turn out puzzles, and some people didn't know that I had generated a bunch with a computer, and was curating them. That was my little secret at the time, I guess. Anyway, I was invited. I didn't have a lot of experience setting variant puzzles. I think the first, it's not the first variant puzzle. The one that I spent quite a lot of time on was a puzzle for the first CTC book. Everybody that was included in the book from a video got invited to set a new puzzle exclusively for the book. And so I messed around with a combination of variants there. But I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. Didn't know what I was getting myself into. Didn't know if I was going to be able to set approachable puzzles on the level that Clover was.
Well, there was also some conversation, Philip, about maybe we can make it not all approachable. Like maybe we can have a spicy puzzle Friday where Philip takes over the channel and posts whatever his mood strikes him.
Yeah,
that idea didn't last long. I don't think we ever did that. Yeah.
Yeah, I made a couple, and ultimately they got included in Gas Leak. So that's where my
I think after we saw like the eagerness with which people were eating up these approachable puzzles, we said, okay, let's just keep hitting it. Let's just see kind of how long people are going to keep being into this.
Yeah, and I'd never had nearly the audience with my puzzles and Sudoku recommendation. I had maybe 5 people at the most even trying them. So yeah, that wasn't going to work with what we were doing. So I would say my first 10 or so puzzles, I was definitely figuring things out. I'm very proud of one of those.
Which one?
It's the, I don't remember what I called it. It's the palindrome killer one that's shaped like a heart.
Oh, that was precious.
Yeah.
Shot through the heart.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So that was actually a twist on something I'd made previously. Again, dedicated to my wife. I make puzzles for my wife, and she doesn't solve Sudoku. And that's a thing.
That's true love. Well, so I guess so that's kind of how things started. I know, I believe initially there was Sam Kappelman Limes was the third amigo. And then
I think the mods approached Sam just kind of on the basis that he's a talented setter and down for whatever. So
and then after Sam, I know moved on from Gas, then Bill Murphy joined. We did ask Bill actually to come today, which was going to be tricky given he's in Australia, but we unfortunately he's out of town this weekend. So okay, so I think a couple of things you kind of touched on a good sort of starting point. So one thing, Philip, you said you'd not really set much variant Sudoku before. Do you think that maybe gave you an advantage in setting approachable things? Because
no.
Okay, that's very easy.
The few that I had set were definitely not approachable.
Okay.
And my setting style at the time, and you can see this in my puzzles today too, there's a lot of concern with aesthetics. Making something that looks pretty and then kind of forcing it to solve nicely, rather than the other way around sometimes. So like I did the Kropke one that was on CTC that was these circles, spirals.
Oh, that puzzle was stunning.
It's very pretty.
I still remember that.
But it's very pretty. So that's the sort of thing that I was setting more often. What I was trying to figure out when we started was, how do I set a puzzle that's unique and has a approachable solve path without making it feel trivial to me? And I'm still struggling with that occasionally. It's not that there's anything wrong with very, very easy puzzles. I like very, very easy puzzles on occasion. I flew through one of Clover's recently, and it made me feel very good.
Yeah, you did it in like a minute and a half. You got a little race car reaction.
It's more that I want to do something new. And take Killer, for example. The number of times that we've used a 2-cell 3 cage in a Killer, like, it's very high. Everybody knows what to do with a 2-cell 3 cage. So I don't just want to rely on little things like that everybody in gas has done a dozen times at this point. So I will give myself constraints, patterns that I've put in the grid to kind of constrain my settings. So this is non-negotiable. This is going to be in the grid. Now, what am I going to do with it? And just try and come up with twists on what we've done before. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, but I have some fun setting the puzzles whether it works or not. And I do something with them even if they're not gas. So
it's interesting to me that you bring up the 2-cell 3 cage in Killer, because this is something I kind of struggle to balance too, because the reason I think a 2-cell 3 cage feels trivial, quote unquote, to me when I see it in a puzzle is just because of the sheer volume of Killer Sudoku that I've solved, because it's automatic. I don't have to think about it. And the principle that I try to guide my gas construction by, like my personal definition of approachable, and I've talked about this a bit before, is something akin to figure outable. You know, like something where if you haven't done a giant pile of Killer Sudoku, can you look at this set of 3 cages, you know, there are 3 cages dotted all over the grid, say there's got to be some significance there, and then without having ever done a Killer Sudoku before, figure out, oh, okay, I see this 3 cage is special because it is very heavily constrained. It can only have these 2 that figure-outable principle still applies to a lot of stuff that kind of does feel more novel to us than a 2-cell 3 cage, because you can still say, oh, I see a whole bunch of 3-cell 6 cages all over the grid. That's significant. I'm going to use my big human brain and work out why that's significant. And I think that people who maybe haven't done a bunch of Killer Sudoku were doing that in the same exact way that they're working out the significance of a 2-cell 3 cage or a 2-cell 17 cage. And as long as they can work it out from first principles, and they don't have to have that experience of like, oh, I know this because I've seen it a million times in Killer Sudoku, that's why it's easy. As long as that's not a requirement for it to feel easy, then anything goes. As long as like the easiness comes from like, I can just see this, I can figure out quickly that this is what matters in the puzzle, and I can figure out from first principles why it matters. And ideally do that within no more than 15 minutes.
So from that, it's interesting, like just hearing you both talk there, because it almost sounds like you're thinking of slightly different audiences on the gas puzzles. Like Philip is approaching it from a view of, well, we've all seen a lot of 3 cages, and Clover's approaching it from a point of view of, but what about the people who haven't seen a lot of 3 cages?
I don't want to go too far in that direction, because one thing that we've actually had kind of some interesting conflict with other creators over is people do sometimes carry a misconception that the intention of gas is to teach variant Sudoku. And I think if we were trying to teach variant Sudoku, our puzzles might look similar to how they do, but they wouldn't be the same as what they are, because we are not restraining ourselves from setting puzzles, for example, where the variant is effectively just a gimmick. You know, where the variant is just used in the same way over and over and over and over throughout the puzzle, and you don't see the full potential expression of the variant. You don't see the full range. It's just like, yeah, here's the variant, and you're just going to use it 6 times, and each time it's kind of going to be the same, and you're probably not really going to learn anything about the variant. And that's not very good teaching. That's not really teaching somebody about the variant. And that's something that I think is a bit of a design difference between gas and GAP, is that GAP does have an explicit design principle that they want to demonstrate every significant, like easy move about a variant in their introduction to that variant. We don't. So I don't want to say that gas is targeted to people who have never seen X variant before. That's an audience, but it's not necessarily like, and it's an audience I consider, but it's not the audience.
Yeah, so
I've tried to keep it like agnostic as to anybody's allowed to like approachable puzzles. Anybody's allowed to want approachable puzzles, and they're allowed to like those things and want those things for a variety of different reasons, some of which I'm probably not even aware of.
So it might be more of a thing of, this is not a puzzle designed to teach you how to use this variant, but if you've never seen this variant before, you should be able to make your way through it.
Yeah, and you might very well walk away knowing a bunch about the variant now, or you might just walk away like, okay, I figured out one thing about Killer Sudoku from this puzzle. That was very fun. I enjoyed it.
And I hate this variant.
I have a couple of things.
Sorry,
I have a couple of things on that, and I'm going to do them backwards.
Okay.
What Clover just said about the difference between the GAS and GAP team, I think GAP, they have so many different genres of pencil puzzle that they can go through. They could do a year without revisiting a genre very easily. And so it's kind of more important when that's the case to demonstrate as much as you can about the variant. If they're only going to see it once a year, if that.
We always get to come back and revisit. Like, that's a great thing about setting for GAS.
Especially for me, I have a tendency to revisit favorite variants a lot. Clover and Bill have more of a tendency to try something new.
Well, when Bill started testing for the GP regularly, Bill that took him in a wild new direction, right. And I've really enjoyed seeing that. Like, we get to see previews of the most obscure GP variants in GAS now, because that's all Bill. He loves doing that.
Yeah. There's a lot of that from Clover and Bill especially, and from me during August, because we do gimmicky things. But yeah, I think my killer example, I know that whatever I put in a killer puzzle, everybody's going to see another killer puzzle within the next few weeks, probably. I'd be surprised if we've gone more than like 2 months without setting a killer. And so I do want them to feel a little bit different. I know that we can't have something new in every puzzle. But also, we know that they're going to see Killer Sudoku 100 times if they participate in GAS. We've got lots of time to show them all the cool stuff you can do in a killer. So it's not as important to just throw everything at them in a killer.
And Philip, I don't know if you agree with this, but I find that weirdly reassuring as a setter, because we all get imposter syndrome sometimes, and I find it weirdly reassuring in the sense that it reminds me that they don't all have to be bangers. Some of my GAS puzzles are not very good. And that's okay, because if I set a killer that's not great and doesn't get a great response, they're going to see killer again, like Philip said, next month.
Yep.
It's not like I have one shot to make a good impression of this variant that I love.
Unless it's a totally new, obscure variant, like Step by Step, and nobody ever wants to see it again.
Because nobody ever wants to set it again.
So actually, that brings a couple of points. So Malrog had asked, we put out a call for questions in the SudokuCon Discord, and Malrog had asked, have you discovered any constraints for setting for GAS that you really feel should be more widely known and used? And following on from that, have you ever set a puzzle after discovering, a non-GAS puzzle after discovering a constraint when setting GAS?
I mentioned in the Discord that I sort of immediately had way more joke answers to these than genuine answers. Lemon Sudoku is my joke answer for this. Everybody needs to set more Lemon Sudoku.
Yeah, I think Philip and I together have set like 80% of the Lemon Sudoku in existence.
What?
Poor Richard Stolk. He has a beautiful one, and I don't think anybody's heard of that one.
I ask with trepidation because I'm not actually sure I know what Lemon Sudoku is. Does anyone have an example of a Lemon Sudoku?
So this is a lemon.
Oh, hang on,
it works kind of like a weird arrow.
Philip, do you remember the time we did Lemon Week?
Didn't we do like a lemon blueberry thing?
Yeah, we did like lemon blueberry, lemon peach. I'm trying to pull it up if you want to keep talking.
But yeah, this is all it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a shape that looks like a lemon. The digits on the shape sum to the 2-digit number in the shape.
Okay,
that's
gotcha.
lemon Sudoku.
All right.
This was way back in the day.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
May 7th, 2023 was... Oh, that's big. Hold on. Sorry, Tallcat.
And tropic lines.
Oh, sorry. Let me go.
So this is just an example of just classic gas silliness. Lemon Sudoku, I think we discovered, like I said, through Richard Stolk's Sudoku variant series. There was probably only one, maybe two in existence at the time Gas published its first one, and that led us into eventually a Lemon Sudoku theme week. We had Lemon Peach Sudoku with entropic lemons, lemon blueberry Sudoku with region sum lines, which I think people despised that one. Raspberry lemon Sudoku, which was Renbon and lemon. Lime Sudoku from Philip, which is German Whispers lemon Sudoku.
This is a fun little bit of history, but the very first lemon Sudoku we had in Gas was me posting as sham Kappelman lines.
Oh.
Yes, sham cap lemon limes.
Okay, so that's a joke answer then.
We have more of a serious answer to it though. I mean, I know my answer is yes, but I'll let Philip finish his answer first.
I mean, there have been quite a few things that I've set for the first time in Gas that I've gotten interested in otherwise. Really, almost anything that I hadn't set before. Probably my first Regents Lines puzzle was a Gas, and then I've made all sorts of crazy Regents Lines puzzles from there. The factor lines that I set recently that Clover is still solving. Did you finish the
I think I might be ready to start the recording.
Yeah. I was working on setting another one of those that might appear in Gas sometime. And I might do a harder one. I was already thinking about posting in Theory and Programming. What's the longest factor line you can put in a Sudoku grid? So, yeah. I just anything that I get interested in, I will do a deep dive on at the drop of a hat. So it doesn't take much to get me sucked into something.
Clover, how about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think actually something that happened very, very early in the history of Gas is honestly probably no more than 6 months into Gas. I got called out, and I don't mean that it was, unkind. I was called out very kindly by another community member not involved in Gas, who is somebody who I really, really respect and whose setting I really respect, who said more or less, Clover, why are all of your Gas puzzles starting to look the same? Like, great. I think what she said was specifically, great, it's another killer that has a bunch of 2-cell cages. And I was like, hey, that's, it's too early for me to be doing this. Like, I am going to take this.
The 2-cell 3 cage.
Literally, that was the comment, and it was from somebody whose taste and whose setting ability I very, very much respect. And I took that as a challenge and ended up doing, I think, 6 months where I didn't repeat a variant. And that led me to very heavily use the Ropico Sudoku variants listing, and kind of challenged me to gasify a lot of variants that otherwise I would have either glanced at, maybe in the GP, and dismissed as ungassable. But, if it was the next variant on my list, I kind of felt like I had to do it to keep this streak going. And by doing that, I discovered a handful of variants that I genuinely love that I think are underexplored. And a few of those are things that I have gone on to develop further, either through my Patreon or through my other published puzzles. One that came up recently, I published a pointing difference puzzle that was a collaboration with Glipperl. It's like Little Killer, except that the Little Killer clues don't tell you a sum. They tell you the number of distinct digits on a diagonal. That started out as something I was playing with for gas. People who have solved gas for a while know about my deep and abiding affection for the variant first seen odd even, which I have seen almost nobody else set. And I think that there is some depth to it, and I think that it could use a good exploration. Gas, and this wasn't me, this was Sam, I believe. Gas was responsible, I think it's fair to say, for the renaissance in 159 Sudoku and in indexing Sudoku in general, and in numbered room Sudoku. I think Sam brought those into Gas, and then suddenly people were setting very compelling, very deep puzzles using those variants. So that's an example of kind of passing it along to the community and not necessarily taking a variant from Gas.
They weren't all compelling, but...
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sam.
Actually, I think I did solve that pointing differences, one of yours in Glipperl, and it was very, very good.
Oh, did you like it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny because I go through periods with the gas in the CTC Discord where I'll have like stretches where I just solve them, and it becomes almost like I get to my office at work and I'll sit and I'll just do the gas from yesterday just to kind of clean my mind for the day, and then off I go. And every now and then I'll come across variants that I'm like, I got to make something with this, and I'm absolutely terrible at following through and actually doing that. But it always consistently surprises me how many you all seem to come up with.
If the community wanted to give me a birthday present, and my birthday is coming up, one thing, probably the one change I would most like to see in the online Sudoku community is a shift from... Right now we kind of have this two-pronged situation where a lot of the new work is being done either in increasingly elaborate presentations of very, very, very well-explored constraints, or increasingly elaborate and complex novel rule sets that are increasingly difficult to understand and set. And what I would love to see from the community is instead more people adopting a middle way of taking variants that are known, that are not purely novel, that exist, that have been explored to some extent, but that are underexplored, where the full logic is not really fully appreciated, and working to kind of pull more depth out of them. I feel like this is the number one thing that I try to do in my puzzles that show up on LMD these days, is take a variant that's known, that's described, that's easy to understand, and find depth in it that hasn't been seen before.
I mean, I think for my own personal setting, I think in my setting video I said, there was a time, I think, my set of Spotlight with me and Mister, I said, it was at a time when everything seemed to be chaos constructions, and I was just like, can we please just dispense with chaos constructions and play with some of these existing variants in new ways? There's plenty of stuff to be found out there. And yeah, Malrog is agreeing, saying variants with fewer than a 20-word rule set, please.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So, getting, I guess, kind of to the sort of nuts and bolts of things a bit, and we sort of touched on this a bit already. If you were able to distill what you consider the key components of a gas puzzle down into maybe 3 or 4 bullet points, what would you say they are? And Philip's smiling, which makes me think he's got a joke answer for this one.
Let's hear it.
I don't have a joke answer. It's
a really good question.
Very different answers. So
yeah.
Well, I imagine we probably agree with each other's answers, but we're probably going to prioritize different things. So you feel free to go first.
The main two things for me, one is that it is approachable, that there is a solve path that you can figure out, like Clover was talking about. that you can look at this puzzle, this variant, for the first time. And if you're careful and read the rules and look at what the setter is trying to do, you can figure out what's going on, what they're trying to get you to do, what sort of solve path they're going for.
We don't always nail that, but I think we usually hit that one.
Yeah. The second thing is that for me, the variant has a significant part to play in the puzzle. Mm-hmm. And we don't always do this well either.
I called you out for that on a puzzle I tested yesterday for you, Philip.
Yeah.
And I stand behind that. I agree with you 100%.
Crossed it off. There is a tendency with some variants, especially, to make the variant part so easy that it's really just a classic in disguise. And I've literally posted a classic in disguise before. I'm not talking about that. My 9-cell thermo puzzle. But there's a tendency with that, especially with newer variants, newer to us, that we haven't set before, and we're struggling to come up with different things that are gas level for this variant. And we end up making it too easy. The step-by-step is a good example of that. Like, the variant itself is prone to a very easy solve. There are only so many things you can do with that variant. I kind of want to set a puzzle with like 40 arrows in it, and it's more complicated. That would not be gas.
Yeah.
The gas version of this is, okay, it's very obvious what its arrow has to be.
So what I want to do for that step-by-step, Philip, is I was thinking about this actually, because I agree with you, though I think, again, don't sell yourself short. Like, there was a non-zero amount of depth to that. I know, because I had to record the walkthrough for it. And the depth was in these situations where you had multiple arrows that were... Here, I'm trying to draw something on the screen. Hopefully Tallcat's following me. Where you had like multiple arrows that were all candidates for like the next place the path was going to go. Where, you know, it could be, okay, the next arrow we go to is this one, and therefore this is going to be a 5 for 5 steps, and then the next one we go to is this one, so that's going to be a 2 for 2 steps, and so on. Or alternatively, it's maybe we start here and we go 1 step, and then we go 2 steps to this one, and then we go 4 steps, or whoop, that wouldn't go there, 4 steps to this one, and so on. Like, and I wanted to go back and set something that majored on that. Like, I am more popular today on the phone than I have been for years. I wanted to go, but I've just turned it off now. I wanted to go back and set something that majored on that majored on having, you know, multiple arrows kind of all pointing in a direction, and then maybe like the classic Sudoku heavily restricts which digits are candidates for a particular arrow cell, and then only one of those potential digits actually results in landing in a new arrow.
So I will say early versions of this had stuff like that.
Yeah, but it ended up too spicy.
Well, no, it's not that it ended up too spicy. It's that, for one thing, we already had some constraints on what this puzzle could look like, because we had our guessing game.
Yeah, so, I would not want to be the one setting this in August guessing game month. I do not envy you.
Specifically, I was stuck with this. I mean, I didn't have to do this. I actually came up with this as a dumb idea, and was like, Clover, do you want to set this particular variant because it would be funny? And she ran with it, so we did that. But I was stuck with what digits go in the purple cells, and I was trying to make them part of the variant as well. So 2 of them are on arrows, 1 of them can't be, and that's very constraining. The other thing is I was trying to make something symmetrical. I was trying to make the arrows symmetrical. And it turns out it's very, 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 very hard to set a step-by-step with constraints already in the grid that is symmetrical in the arrows and also interesting.
So, Philip, would you say that symmetry is a design principle of gas? Because I was going to say that on my list.
It's certainly a design principle of my puzzles.
And I don't even know how that happened. It may just be because I got exposed to so many of your puzzles that it infected my brain.
Yeah. And for me, it's purely aesthetics. Like, I like looking at a puzzle that is symmetric. And so when I'm setting it, it makes my brain happier when I'm putting in clues in a symmetric way. So
yeah, I'm going to put something on my what is gas list that I think people probably won't expect me to say, which is, for me, one bullet point on the what is gas list is that it's pleasant to look at. And I consider it a more successful gas, all else being equal, if it is particularly striking or particularly beautiful or particularly surprising looking. Like, I think that, what a puzzle looks like physically matters to me in a way that I think does not necessarily matter to all setters. I think Philip probably feels the same.
Yeah, and we kind of had to grimace in August and deliberately put in non-symmetric things.
So August is going to be known as non-symmetric.
That made it fun as well, because we were doing it for a reason.
Yeah, I used asymmetry as an indicator of like hidden things in the grid, which was fun for me.
One thing I've been called out on is making my puzzles too symmetric. It's very easy. It can be a crutch in setting to set puzzles that aren't just visually symmetric, but that are logically symmetric. And I am particularly guilty of putting in puzzles with a particular type of symmetry that has been called X-windmill symmetry. I've kind of taken a liking to that term. But basically, if you look at rotationally symmetric positions, I probably have an example of this somewhere. Let me find one.
I was actually, while you're looking for that, I was going to say, when you're talking about symmetry and looking at it, I do feel that one of the things that I see a lot in gas, and I use the same thing in non-gas puzzles of, like, you do a deduction here and then you do a similar deduction over here as a way to kind of soften the step. And I use it as a way of, if you've got a particularly hard step, then I don't want you to have to do, I can then say, well, you're going to use it again to make it easier.
Yeah.
So this is an earlier August puzzle, and so it's not 100% symmetric. It has that little bit of asymmetry that we had to include. But other than this digit, if you look at rotationally opposite cells, if they contain given digits, those digits sum to 10. So 1 plus 9, 2 plus 8, plus 7. I've set a lot of puzzles with this type of symmetry. And not all of them are logically symmetric. If you use a variant that's not symmetric in that same way, then the solve doesn't have to be. So I like playing with that.
I always really enjoy seeing that when I do walkthroughs. Like, this looks superficially symmetrical, but now I get to explain why, white Kropke versus black Kropke makes it logically asymmetric.
Yeah. But even with that, I probably rely on this too much. I was called out a little bit on this recently, or at least by the GMP crowd. And so that's something I keep in mind. I've deliberately been setting puzzles recently that have some aesthetic theme, but don't have GSP. If you're not familiar with GSP, it stands for girth symmetric placement.
Thank you. I was going to ask you, what is that principle?
I mean, you can just substitute the term like logical symmetry and that basic. I mean, they don't mean the same thing, but it essentially covers what people are taking issue with in gas. The idea that, you have a deduction here, you have the identical deduction, but kind of reversed over here.
And there are a couple things with GSP. If you're solving a puzzle with GSP, you can use uniqueness. And I think just the fact that it's there bothers some people. And the reason is, if you can make symmetric deductions all over the grid, then if you start with symmetric givens, you're going to end up with symmetric digits. And so the classic example of this is, I have a puzzle with this kind of symmetry, ignoring the 9. I can just place a 5 in the central cell. because I know the puzzle's unique. And if it's unique, it has to have a 5 there. So that's kind of the negative side of it. For gas, there is the positive of we're showing them a deduction, possibly for the first time, maybe with the 2-cell 3 gauge. And then on the other side of the grid, we're showing them the same deduction with the 2-cell 17 gauge. And they have to think about it slightly differently because they're doing a maximum instead of a minimum, but it's the same deduction. And for people who are unfamiliar with the variant, that's very helpful. They're like, oh, I just used this and now I get to use it again. That's exciting. And it can help guide the solve path. Even if the full puzzle isn't symmetric, there are parts that can be. So
there are various categories of solvers that you can categorize by the way in which they respond to GSP in a puzzle. And one category is, the jaded solvers, the solvers who say, well, why'd you only give me a quarter of a puzzle, Philip? And that's, it's a reasonable complaint. And I think that part of that comes from genuinely having that sense of like, oh, I've been robbed of half of my puzzle. And another part of it comes from like this cultural thing where they learn that GSP is considered to be aesthetically distasteful or undesirable. And therefore they kind of like reproduce that meme of like, oh, it's a GSP puzzle again. And I'm not going to speculate on like which of those is the dominant force, whether it's just kind of people repeating what they've heard other people say and it's just become this cultural aesthetic thing, or whether it's genuine, like it causes them displeasure to experience that kind of solve path. But then there's also the group of people like Philip said, where they notice it and they're like, oh, that's kind of neat. Like I can do this here and then I can do this here. Like, oh, and then there's even a group of people who notice it maybe 3/4 of the way through the solve, or maybe not even until after they're done. And it makes them feel smart that they picked up on it. They're looking at it like, oh, wait a second. I just realized that this is the same. That makes me feel really clever. And then there's a big group of solvers that don't notice.
Yeah.
And the size of that group of solvers is decreasing as our audience becomes more mature and as there are more people hanging around who have been with gas for 4 years, but it's still substantial.
Yeah. This is a little bit of a tangent. I saw Malrog just mention roping. We rely on roping a lot as well. That for me tends to be less deliberate. It happens. Bill does it deliberately quite a lot. What I was going to say is, I think for a lot of people, they've seen so many puzzles that are logically symmetric. They're just like avoid it like the plague. And I think there's a lot to learn from symmetry in puzzles. There are interesting things that you can do just in classic Sudoku. Shai explored this with puzzles that are not symmetric. And you can make a deduction based on the fact that if it were symmetric, it would have multiple solutions. And so you can't place a digit in a particular cell. You have to avoid the symmetry. So there's that sort of theoretical thing. But also as a setter, the number of times that some sort of symmetry issue comes up, I will be setting a puzzle, even if the variant is not symmetric. I'm trying to place the givens symmetrically, and I'll end up kind of late in the process, and I'll look at the candidates I have left, and I'll realize there is no way to make this unique with symmetric givens. The classic example of that, just bring up my blank thing. The classic example, I have seen this so many times, is the entire grid is solved except I have a 3-7 like this. And you can't resolve it. I mean, maybe depending on what variant you're using, but often you can't resolve it without putting a 3 into those cells or a 7 into those cells if you want to keep it symmetric. So recognizing stuff like that is useful as a setter, and you're never going to see it if you're like too averse to symmetry. I'm not saying all puzzles should have GSP or anything like that, but
there's a reason we think it's fine. It's not against our design principles. I think that the gas that I published that I consider to be the most successful vis-a-vis logic and symmetry are the ones where the quote-unquote logical symmetry is of the form where one deduction doesn't mirror another, but it echoes it. where, you know, I might have you do something with a 2-cell 3 cage up here, and then I might have you do the same thing, not with a 2-cell 17 cage, but with a 2-cell 4 cage. So that the concept, it's restricted to only one specific pair of low digits is the same, but it plays out differently enough that you don't end up with symmetric digit placement and you don't end up with symmetric logic later in the solve.
And you have that at
and
the
I
top
definitely
and bottom,
don't always hit that.
Yeah. You have that at the top and bottom. You have a 16 and 17 on the left and right. And you just do that all the way around the grid. And the deductions are very similar, but you end up with very different logic where they intersect because they have different pairs of digits.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Because the intersection between 16 and 4 might be different from the intersection between 3 and 17, depending on what else you put in the grid.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I did one of the guesses recently, and it was like that I was... And it actually made me pause for a second because I was like, oh, here's a 17 cage, here's a 3 cage, and then I was like... and there's going to be this, and then the fourth one was slightly different, and I was like, wait, that's not how it's supposed to work. And it like threw me out. It like ruined my time by like 10 seconds, you know. But
the second tier for me is, and this is pretty much me cheating, is where I'm 80% of the way through setting a gas. I've realized just because of whatever quirk of the variant or whatever quirk of the aesthetic setup I've insisted on using, because I'm the same way as Philip, I'll just be like, the grid has to look like this, and I will not rest until it's done. But just whatever quirk of how I've chosen to set it has led it to be nearly logically symmetrical, and I'll kind of get to the end of the process and be like, okay, there are 2 ways I can finish this. One of them leads to full, just florid logical symmetry. The other one leads to it being slightly off, so that sometimes a 5 is opposite a 5, and sometimes a 5 is opposite a 3. And I'll usually go for the second one just to keep people from raising an eyebrow at me for GSP, and it's not really any different from a full GSP puzzle, but it's just a little nod to like, yes, I acknowledge that some people consider full GSP to be undesirable, and here's some proof that I'm able to set a puzzle without it.
One of the things I tried really hard to do with the August puzzles, since we had these asymmetric given digits, was to make sure that it didn't end up just having GSP anyway. Either by not having the symmetric digit in that opposite cell that wasn't filled, or if the variant allowed not having 5 in the center, or something along those lines. Malrog pointed out Bill's puzzle today is a very good example of what Clover was just talking about. I highlighted a 4 gauge and a 17 gauge. Very similar deductions, one on minimums and one on maximums, but they're not symmetric in the way that we're talking about. And just generally the logic in this puzzle is like that. The rows solve similarly to their symmetric counterparts, but not exactly the same.
So I think we've kind of, just in the course of that, from the key components, I think we sort of touched on quite a few things that you aim for, that you like to do. Are there absolute things that you... I mean, I can probably guess what a couple of these might be, but are there absolute sort of things that you say, no, don't? This is a definite don't when setting a gas puzzle.
Well, Philip, if I say that one deduction, do you remember what I'm talking about? The one killer deduction. The one they don't like.
There's 2 I'm thinking of, actually.
With the 5 and the 6.
Okay, yeah. There's another one that's similar to that. I had that in mind earlier when I was talking about killer deductions. Yeah.
So Tallcat, are you on my screen?
Yep, hopped over.
All right. If you put this in a gas killer, the solvers will mutiny.
We've probably shown them this multiple times.
We've shown them this like 300 times. Yeah. And all it is it's just, this can either be 1 and 4 or 2 and 3. And if it's 1 and 4, that's not what I meant to type in there. And if it were to be 1 and 4,
I do that all the time in Pimpo.
Then we couldn't fill the 6 cage.
Yeah.
So it must be 2 and 3 with a 1 and 5 here. Alternatively, you look at it as you add them both together. 11 and 4 that see each other is always 1, 2, 3, 5. How do we split those up to make a 5 and a 6? Well, 2, 3, and 1, 5. So 2 easy ways to look at it, and if you put this in a gas puzzle, the solvers will hang you. Like, they will put you on a pyre and set it alight.
Now, here's the question. If you do this, but with a 4 and 7, is that okay?
Oh, no. I think it is.
Because the 4 is you can fixed, resolve, right? So you do this with a 4 and a 7, and you do this with a 16 and a 13, and then you do it with the 5 and the 6.
Mm-hmm.
And we've probably done that at some point.
I mean, I think we've done this in puzzles, and we've taken the complaints. And that's kind of a silly answer on my part, because I fully understand why that deduction seems unnatural to people. I think it just requires like a style of logic that people who are not super comfortable with killer Sudoku are not using by default. I don't think people are kind of by default thinking to add cages together, and I don't think by default they're thinking to assess multiple different possibilities for filling a cage and the effect that they have on other cages. It's just a lot of steps for them.
Mm.
And that's fine, and it makes perfect sense to me, and like, I swear I'm not mad about it. But I think like deductions that have that flavor, I think I've developed a good intuition for identifying them and kind of like smacking them back down as they try to pop up in puzzles I'm setting.
So in that sense, this kind of came up as a question. Do you guys test each other's gas puzzles? Do you have dedicated testers for them?
We test each other's.
We test each other's.
Almost exclusively.
And so then when you're testing them, are there ever I mean, there surely must be times when you're kind of like, okay, absolutely not. This is not a gas step. You know.
Yes, and it's usually my puzzle, and it's usually Bill. Occasionally it's Clover, but it's usually Bill because he tends to get to them first. And he will be very blunt about it like that. He will say absolutely not. Or some other comment that will just make me laugh all day.
Maybe some Australian comment.
Yeah, and
it's always something cheeky and Australian.
Yeah.
I will immediately ship it off to either Gas Leak or Patreon and set something different. But yeah, in the past, Backpow solved for us. He was kind of our personal moderator when we started Gas, I guess, when we had our own channels.
He was so helpful in the early days. I really appreciate Backpow. He's kind of stepped back from the server a bit in general, but I'm very grateful for the work he did to keep Gas underway in early days.
Between him and Sam solving, whenever there was a Clover puzzle posted to testing, I felt so slow. I've gotten faster now, but
over the last 4 years, Philip, you have gotten fast.
Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of like the tallness thing at Sudoku. when you're surrounded by very fast people, you feel slow.
So no Tandai
one thing I think is
solving your gas puzzles for the dinosaur for the 2-hat time, 30 seconds.
She has solved some before. Yoshi often makes me feel slow. I think
he got my last really quick one in 39 seconds. I think he beat Thomas. He was the only person who did.
When I checked, I was still in third. I don't know if that changed later, but I was within like 15-16 seconds of Thomas.
You zoomed on that one. One thing I think is interesting to note is that when we have a gas puzzle straight up rejected, sometimes it is because of something that you can put your finger on and say, no, like this pointing pair in this corner of the grid, that's not what they're going to be focusing on, and they probably won't have it pencil marked, making an elimination on the other side of the grid. That's too much. Maybe take that out. But also sometimes you can look at a gas puzzle that got rejected and you can run it through a solver and you can say this is literally 100% singles. You know, it's singles and trivial uses of the variant, and it still somehow feels inappropriate. And I think I have some ideas about what the features are that kind of cause that like feeling. And I think a lot of it has to do with the extent to which we're expecting the solver to draw their attention away from where they're naturally going to be looking and pencil marking and like go somewhere else to find the next step to unlock. But that's not all of it. And I don't think I know
alternatively,
what
the
all of the
variant
features
itself
are.
has some spatial component.
Mm-hmm.
So disjoint groups,
yep.
we get complaints about that all the time, either in testing or when we actually post them. The anti-night that you solved last night or this morning, I knew
22 minutes it took me.
I knew that A, it's all singles, and B, there is no way that this is gas. Because it was a struggle for me, and I said it. It has some deductions where you have to use. I can just show on the screen real quick.
Oh, let me just transition. Okay, go ahead.
In the right mode, you have something like this. Oh, I switched tabs. Something like this. 5 can't go in these cells, but it also can't go in these 2 cells by anti-night. So it has to go here. There are about 3 or 4 uses of something like that. Mm-hmm. And that's too much for gas.
One of them.
Even one is too much for gas. So that went straight to leak. But it's a cool puzzle. It looks really neat. It's just too hard. And that happens
That
sometimes.
said, if you have a gas puzzle and you want to do that, you can kind of get away with it as long as your setup like looks like this.
Yeah. And
like
Clover
if the very first thing they see in the puzzle is this, and you keep all of your other givens away from it, and you like mark it as 1, 2, 3, 4, and you like put a big flashing neon sign on it, like look at me, and maybe you like use some symmetry over here, and we're gonna have like kind of a GSP like symmetry where we make this 9, 8, 7, 6, and those are also givens, and then like all of the other givens are like clustered in the middle. Then you could put it in gas. Yep. But if you're not going to put like a screaming neon sign on that deduction that says, this is the point of the puzzle, this is it, here it is, look at me, if you're not going to do that, there's just stuff that like you just get a feel for what people are and aren't going to see. Yeah. And that's something they aren't going to see.
That speaks a lot to how differently I set puzzles most of the time. I've set puzzles like this. When I'm setting classics, targeting a particular technique, I set them exactly like this. I will put in my setup first and then make it solve.
So that actually...
But when I'm setting generally, I'm putting aesthetics in first. Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, so that kind of brings actually to something, because I feel... when I think of your styles as setters in general, and I think, like I remember your talk at Sudoku, Philip, that was like how to make insanely hard puzzles, and I'm on a quest to make insanely hard the hardest possible puzzle. And I think of Clover, and I know Clover has some pretty solid difficult puzzles, but I think of Clover as being much more beyond the gas in a sort of middle to kind of maybe 3 to 4 LMD kind of range.
It's funny because I've often wondered like why that is the perception. I think it just has to do with which of my puzzles are more salient to people, because if you actually look at my LMD page, I think the majority of my puzzles are 4 and 5 star rated for difficulty.
Yeah.
And that is the majority of kind of like set pieces that I publish, like the majority of the puzzles that I really put a ton of time into and kind of take the trouble to promote and post in various places. Those are usually very hard. Like I've set some very, very hard puzzles.
No, absolutely.
That said, it's not what I'm known for. I don't think it's what I should be known for. And I think maybe it's just because my easy puzzles are better.
Actually, random aside, Packing Problem was wonderful. Your latest.
Thank you. And not too hard. Reasonably approachable. I was a little surprised to see it settle out at 3 star. I expected people to have a harder time finding the break-in, but luckily people seem to go straight to it. So they ended up settling on 3.
And I would say it's not that your easier puzzles are better, although some of your easy puzzles are fantastic and among your best puzzles. It's that they're approachable and more people solve them. So you get a reputation for it.
So do you have,
I don't have the same reputation for some reason, even though I've been studying gas for 4 years.
That's true. But kind of, I guess, based on the place I was going with that question is based on your sort of reputations, one would think, oh, you guys probably have very different approaches to setting a gas puzzle. So kind of getting to a sort of nuts and bolts things, what are your sort of approaches for setting? And I have thinking with Clover, I think we've talked on this in the past, and you said you oftentimes have kind of an iterative process. Where is that kind of about where you go from?
Well, I think the biggest difference that's worth noting is that I use virtually no computer assistance when setting. And Philip uses quite a bit of computer assistance when setting. And I don't think that there is anything good or bad about either of those things. I just think it's what style suits kind of just the setter personality that you have built over the course of doing this for a really long time. And that's something that makes me unusual just among setters in general. I almost exclusively set in Penpa for virtually everything. I'm more comfortable like that. I find that I produce better puzzles when I kind of intentionally blind myself to what the computer is seeing. Because it is easier for me to ignore a deduction that I don't want to use if I just don't even see it. And I inevitably, if I set in F puzzles with the ranks solver, if I set in Sudoku Maker, if I set in something that will give me a boost, the way my brain works is that once I've seen something, I struggle to turn it off. I struggle to kind of focus on what I want to be focusing on. So it is easier for me if I set in a way that naturally leads my attention only to the things that I want to be paying attention to and kind of forwarding in the puzzle. So that's a big difference.
I almost take exactly the opposite approach about the same thing, in that a lot of the puzzles I originally published were very hard classics. And when you're trying to set a puzzle that has a very hard step in a classic, the biggest thing you have to think about after you set it up in the classic is no bypass. If I put in a digit to make it unique and now it's all singles, I've ruined the puzzle. So
I had a commission recently. I had a commission recently for a pack of hard classics showcasing specific techniques from Smart Hobbies. And I mean, I didn't want to take this commission and just say to him, like, I'm probably not your girl for this. Like, I knew I could rise to the challenge, but it was a challenge for me because I used a lot of computer tooling to make that work, and it was not natural for me. It was very interesting.
Yes. So when I'm setting gas, either I already have some aesthetic considerations in mind, and I'm more crafting the variant part around those. I have an example I might show in a minute, but or if I'm trying to set something up like what Clover is showing with the anti-knight, I want to know that there's not a bypass for it. I want to know that there's not something that is ruining that deduction.
And in gas, I don't care if there are bypasses.
Right,
I have decided not to care.
Yeah.
and that's another stylistic difference.
It's a stylistic difference, and it's probably a healthier approach to gas, but it's just so ingrained in how I set puzzles. Yeah.
So,
but yeah, I do use computer assistance quite a lot. You can see I'm setting in F puzzles right here. I almost always have the solver on, and it's not necessarily to find the logic. Like when I'm setting a gas puzzle, what I'm putting in the puzzle, I know what the logic is for it before I put it in. It's more to do with, are there going to be problems making this unique while retaining the aesthetic that I'm going for? Or is something I'm putting in just way too powerful and it just makes the rest of the puzzle trivial? And sometimes that's
here's actually a very funny example, Philip, that you just made me think of, is if you look at the puzzle I have up on the screen where I suggested, like, here would be my approach to sharing this deduction with solvers. Look at this. So we're doing anti-knight. 3 is not able to go in any of those cells, so we have pointing 3s.
Yep.
And 3 is blocked there by anti-knight, so there's 3. And if people see it that way, I do not care. I never cared. It's just always kind of how my setting has worked. And interestingly,
to me, that's basically the same deduction.
Okay, but maybe that's not a great example.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I don't even know that I would have seen it like that myself initially, without actually sitting here thinking about it as you were talking about bypasses.
That's something that comes up a lot in Sudoku, is that there will be a logically almost opposite way of seeing something. I still get just ever so slightly annoyed when people call something an X-Wing that's not really an X-Wing.
Oh my gosh, me too.
Actually, that's quite a funny transition, because I was going to say, a lot of the times on Zetamas streams, you can see 3 people in the chat trying to tell him the same thing, but 3 different ways.
Right.
The reason it made me think is because what people call an X-Wing that isn't an X-Wing, he calls a Zack-Wing. But actually, Rockrat just asked in the chat, Clover, that having seen you set Gas live in the past, he gets a feeling that you're very quick to kill your darlings and move on to a new idea. Would you say that's true?
Yep, and I think that that's both a blessing and a curse. I think it's a personality thing. I think that if you want to kind of frame it in a positive way, I think that I am not somebody who suffers from getting overly attached to a sinking ship of an idea. I believe that behind this puzzle, there will always be another puzzle. Behind this idea, there will always be another idea. And the more ideas I generate and throw away, the more ideas I'll have in the future. Ideas for me are just infinitely self-generating. They're not precious, and the more of them that I toss, the more of them I end up randomly having when I shoot awake at 2 a.m, or when I'm taking a shower, or when I'm driving to work. Maybe ideas were hard to come by when I very, very, very first started setting, and I didn't have this because I'm always thinking about puzzles. I am always thinking about puzzles. There's always this undercurrent in everything about my daily life that is just, there's a little machine in my brain that's generating I want it to or not, apparently, because things just pop in for the weirdest reasons. Yeah. And maybe that means that sometimes I will dismiss something as not good or not doable, when in reality, the tiny, subtle little alteration that would have made it into something genuinely beautiful and remarkable was hiding right around the corner. But also, it means that I don't waste my own time, and I try not to waste my solver's time. Not that I would accuse other setters of wasting solver's time. That's kind of a horrible thing to say about it. Philip, you do not. That's kind of a horrible thing to say about anybody. But you do though. You do, quote unquote, waste your own time. Yeah, it's not a waste if it's pleasurable on the one hand, but on the other hand, yes, I have seen you sit down with a task, like a variant or an aesthetic constraint, and waste your own time.
Yeah.
And that is something that, if you want to frame this positively, I don't suffer from
progress obsessively, either in theory and programming or in the Gas channel. Clover, look at this horrible thing that I made.
And I'm like, carry on. keep on keeping on. You're doing great.
I think I suffer from that. I think I suffer from that a little, in that I will have an idea that I'm kind of like, oh, that's really cool. And my brain is just like, okay, that's it. I'm not going to allow you to think about anything else until you've tackled that idea. And it's hard
something that upsets me, emotionally upsets me, and it's a little embarrassing to admit that this has an emotional effect on me, is the situation where you see somebody post an otherwise beautifully set puzzle, and they're either asking, how do I disambiguate the ending? Or they're asking something like, is it better to have a 2-cell thermo to disambiguate this, or a single Kropke dot? Or they're saying, I'm so upset because I can't do anything with this ending to make it unique. Or they're saying, here's a puzzle, I was forced to sacrifice 97% of the good logic just to make it all of these variations on this concept of here's a puzzle, I'm gonna post it even though I'm profoundly unhappy with it, because I couldn't make it unique, or people who like make some really horrific aesthetic sacrifice to make it unique. And for me, the immediate intuitive answer to that situation has always been, let's press Control, press Z, and hold them down until it looks like we are no longer in this pit we've dug. And then let's keep trying. And that means there are two puzzles that I've set. One of them is called Ouroboros. It's on LMD. It's a quadruple Sudoku. Yep, and then the other one is actually Packing Problem, which you saw recently. That each took me, I think the first one took me like 40 to 60 hours to set. Because I kept getting to the end and having a puzzle I was very happy with and being unable to resolve it. And there is a version of Clover that added a Kropke dot. There's a version of Clover that put a 2-cell thermo in there that, made one of the quads have more than 2 digits in it. And I don't know. I couldn't do it. Like, it's just very... It's going to sound too emotionally charged to say it like this, but I think the most honest thing to say is it feels repulsive in a way to do that. It feels like I'm setting something out into the world that's like malformed. It's not right. It's like, it's not what I wanted. And then Packing Problem, I think Simon mentioned in the video of it that when Glipperl sent it in, he said that it took me 1.5 years. So I know this because Glipperl is my partner, for those of you who do not know that. And we have been dating for about 1.5 years. And I started working on this puzzle around the time we started dating. And I remember this because one of the first really sweet little gifts he gave me was a custom constraint for Sudoku Maker to work on a version of this variant. And funny thing is, I didn't really end up using it in the end to set the puzzle, but I thought it was incredibly charming. So if that's how you get the girl, by the way, set her custom Sudoku Maker variants. He's smiling. He's over there working on packing.
But
God, how did I get on this? Like, do I iterate and kill my darlings? Yes, I do. I can't not do it, and I will do it to the point where, like, I am causing myself pain by doing it, but I also think I spare myself some pain by doing it.
I mean, I guess
that's something I definitely had to learn doing gas, is there are some things I'm never going to get to work in gas. So either give up on them and do something else for gas, or it's still a good idea, throw it over to the Patreon pile and work on it there, and do something else for gas.
I have gotten, myself, I have gotten a little better. I finally did actually open a spreadsheet or a Word file, and if I have an idea and I'm like, I try it for like a bit and then I throw it off to one side. So for some reason that fools my brain into thinking I can get away with it. But I guess from a practical point of view, so I mean, I think like when I set Sudoku, oftentimes I'm trying to, if I have the interesting logic, I'm trying to get sort of maybe the minimal clues that at least make something flow nicely, and I can keep the logic and such. I mean, I guess by its nature, oftentimes with gas, you have like a whole bunch of clues in the grid. And for me, I mean, Philip, you kind of touched on this earlier of saying, if you're trying to go for a certain aesthetic, where maybe your givens are going to go, or maybe your quads are going to go, or maybe your killer cages are going to go. But I find it hard to wrap my brain around, and I mean, I haven't set many gas level puzzles at all. I find it hard to wrap my brain around about, well, starting with a grid with all of those cages or all of those aesthetics. I mean, how do you guys approach that?
So, Philip, is it fair to say that you feel that with time? Because I feel like I've gotten better at that with time. Like knowing what aesthetic setup will work and knowing intuitively what will fail instantly.
Yeah, I've gotten better at it, definitely. I still wouldn't say I'm great at it. Sometimes I will just
I wouldn't
force it to work, even though it really shouldn't. Sometimes those are really good puzzles, and sometimes they're just kind of mid. But yeah, it's definitely something you have to get better at, or you're gonna waste a lot of time.
So do you think? So do you think that touches on another question we had of like, do you think that over time you've both now just? I mean, you still said occasionally you'll pull out puzzles that are just like, no, this is absolutely not gas. Do you think over time that you've gotten a better sense and a better innate sense of what's an acceptable gas step, or do you still think it's still hit or miss for you both?
Ooh.
I have a pretty good idea what's gas and what's not, and I will still try and sneak stuff in sometimes. I'll be like, maybe this is okay.
So you're still
and then Bill calls you out.
There's always the possibility that when I solved it myself, it felt like a little too much. But Clover and Bill solving it, they're looking at it fresh. They're not considering what I was considering, and they see something that I just was overlooking that does make it gas. Maybe it's narrow, but that does happen occasionally. But I have a pretty good idea of what they're going to say no to, and I'll still post them to testing and be like, this is a little long. Might be a little spicy.
That does fit with your...
and usually the results come back. Yeah. It's a little long. It's a little spicy.
And every now and then, I will be so attached to one of those puzzles that I will post it anyway, and either post a slightly nerfed version of it, or post a big old hint, like with factor lines, or something along those lines.
Philip actually touched on something kind of interesting that I think people don't realize about gas, and this is a little tangential to the topic of conversation right now, but one thing people would probably find interesting is that in gas, we each ultimately make the call for our own puzzles, whether they'll go in. And if the guys say to me, this is no good, as long as they're not saying it's broken or it's non-unique, very occasionally it still goes in. I'm allowed to disagree, and they're allowed to disagree with me. And sometimes that ends up being good, and sometimes that ends up being bad. But I mean, I think a principle of like how we run this project has always been, we have a pretty high degree of autonomy. Even though we do test each other's puzzles, there's not like a formal approval process. It's just for the purpose of getting feedback.
I've had at least 2 of those in the last month and a half. So
yeah. I've had some, and some of mine, like 1 or 2 of mine have ended up going through because I was tired and I didn't have something better to post.
Oh, I've definitely.
And I think that's fine. It's a lengthy, big project, like a long project. And sometimes there are going to be weeks where I'm freaking exhausted and it is all I can do to post something. Yeah. And it happens. And I've kind of given myself permission to do that.
I have noticed that has not happened so much in the past 3 months because I have kind of been forced to be more organized. And so I've been really, really organized in the head. I've got almost all of my September and October puzzles set, which going back like 6 months, I was constantly setting the puzzle the night before and hoping Bill tested it.
I set one the morning of once, Philip. Did I ever tell you that? Yeah. One morning I woke up and I had to set a puzzle in bed before leaving for work because I didn't realize I didn't have anything for gas. Yeah, it was a little Renbon. It was not remarkable, but it wasn't awful either. I count it.
Yeah. So I always have a handful of things that I'm not 100% happy with, and I set like a year ago, and they didn't get posted because they weren't as good as what got posted. And if I absolutely had to, I could throw one of those out there.
I could probably turn some up too.
With that. But yeah, it happens less often now. I've gotten better at that, but I was terrible at it.
Yeah, our relationship with Thomas and with GMP has been really good for us, just like as an organization in terms of keeping us accountable and keeping us organized. I think that's been fantastic. I mean, obviously it's tough to be organized, but it feels good.
And actually, on the note, many of you may have seen on the banner below us that we have a GM puzzles. We do have a GM puzzles flashing up. I can scroll back to it quickly, as they have become a sponsor of SudokuCon.
A huge shout out to GMP. They're a new SudokuCon sponsor and have also licensed Gas for the GMP blog, so that Gas has been appearing there for a couple months now, and it's going along great. It's good to have that platform.
That's been really exciting because I've been aware of GMP for years and years and years. Before I even got into Sudoku, I was aware of GMP. So having puzzles on there is very cool. Very exciting.
So, I mean, kind of pulling back a bit, you've said that when it comes to setting the gas, you don't want it to be something where the constraint is sort of trivial. Getting back to the setting process. And, it's basically just like a classic Sudoku with arrows in a grid, or a classic Sudoku with something else in the grid. Do you think there's a kind of ideal balance of that, of constraints versus Sudoku?
One piece of feedback that I do hear a fair bit from solvers, who I don't even think necessarily know that they're giving me feedback when they say this, but I take it as feedback, and it is tough for me to hear, is I did super well on the variant, but then I really struggled with finishing the Sudoku. And that is hard for me to hear, because in a way, to me, like, that suggests that I failed. I mean, I don't think it means the puzzle is trash and needs to be thrown away, but I do consider getting that feedback to be in some sense a failure. Because that suggests that I have, in a way, betrayed that person's expectations. They went into the puzzle, they were cruising along, they had a particular difficulty level, they had a particular style, like they were doing good. And then 80% of the way through the solve, I crushed them. Oops. And I think it's true for a lot of our solvers that they are stronger at working out variant logic than they are at the minutia of classic Sudoku. So in my ideal gas, in the gases that I have set that I am most happy with, one, the variant remains relevant until at least like 75% of the way through the solve. And again, do not always hit this. Sometimes it remains relevant until 10% of the way through the solve, and like that's the best I can do, and sometimes I just have to let those puzzles go. And two, there is a good degree of interplay between the variant and the classic Sudoku, in the sense of there might be a variant-driven deduction that leads into a classic Sudoku deduction that leads into another variant-driven deduction, and so on, where they kind of each build on each other. That said, it's hard to do that in gas when you're setting, because gas for me is not typically set with a path that maintains its kind of a path that is robust all the way through the solve. Like, usually I don't try to set gas with a path that has defined steps all the way through the end of the solve. Like, there might be half a dozen defined steps at the beginning, and then the rest is just, okay, you can kind of pick and choose what you want to approach first.
Yeah. My joke answer is that when somebody breezes through the variant and then gets stuck on this Sudoku part, I have done my job. I'm living up to my reputation. No, I mean, I pretty much 100% agree with what Clover just said. I try and keep the variant interesting. I do try and avoid having it just resolve immediately at the start and you don't have to do anything else. My favorite Clover puzzles when I'm testing are the ones where a lot of the variant is resolved at the start, and then there's that one clue that just sticks around the entire puzzle, and you end up with what looks like a deadly pattern, and oh yeah, I have this other clue. And sometimes I forget that clue exists and sit there for a minute. But I love when she pulls that off.
Yeah, and that, like, I never feel bad about baiting people with that and having them post and say, like, what, this puzzle isn't unique, and I get to just point at, like, that one clue. Like, that is the type of, like, negative feedback that doesn't ever make me actually emotionally feel bad. Like, that just makes me smile.
Yeah.
You just say, well, I could have put a 2-cell thermo in instead.
I do have a tendency for my classic part of it to be harder. It depends on the variant. I think part of that is I just don't notice when I've resolved the variant and I know it solves with singles, and I go through my personal test of it, and I don't have any trouble with it, and I forget that not everybody solves as many classics as I do. Not everybody is as familiar with pointing pairs and naked pairs and things like that as I am. Not everybody is pencil marking as much as I am, which is another thing that we do very differently.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think what very commonly happens for me, Philip, like, to answer the why does this happen question, is I'll set like 75% of a puzzle and it'll mostly be resolved. I'll add a cheeky variant clue somewhere that resolves the rest of it. And then when I test solve it, that variant clue will be available as a deduction from moment one. And so even though when I was setting it, the variant was used all the way to the bitter end because it didn't resolve until I added one last variant clue, when you're solving it, the experience will be very different. I mean, they'll be able to use that variant clue very early. And that happens to me over and over and over. And I mean, I look out for it, but also sometimes I set a puzzle and I'm like, yep, it kind of does that thing that I don't like, but it's otherwise a good puzzle, so let's ship it.
It's interesting, actually, for me, when it comes to going back to what you said about if you have a deadly pattern and then dialing it back to kind of... I always like to try and, if I'm going to plug the clue in earlier so it's going to fit in, if I'm going to resolve it with doing a clue, I want that to plug in earlier into the solve path, so then the solver isn't solving it and they get to the end and they say, oh, well, clearly that clue was just put there to resolve this deadly pattern.
I love giving people that feeling in my puzzles of like, wait, why does that resolve? Like, how did that just resolve? Where did that come from? Why is that unique? Like, I really enjoy doing that to people. That brings me a lot of pleasure.
It's also really hard to do deliberately.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
There are ways to do it. There are ways to do it, but it's hard to do deliberately. It's hard to control what solve path people are going to take.
Yeah.
But we, Clover especially, but all of us to some degree tend to telegraph how you're intended to start with a puzzle. And even that, not everybody will do it. They'll do something completely different, and they'll be asking a question, what do I do next? And they'll be at some completely different point in the solve that I haven't seen before. I don't know what I'm looking at because they haven't done this thing that's just natural for me to do.
And I think that's...
it's always so funny when you're in that spot, like, and if it's one of your puzzles that you've posted, like in the CTC archive, or one of your puzzles you've posted on LMD, usually you can be like, okay, you're on this step. Here's the step where you're at, and here is how you get unstuck on this step. But when they do it in GAS, I also often have the experience you just described, where I look at it and I'm like, I don't know where you are. Like, I have to resolve the puzzle to figure out how you got here.
I was going to say, I think another perhaps misconception about GAS is that these are puzzles that are meant to have 10 different solve paths so you can meander your way through them, when it's really not the case. I mean, people may look at certain steps differently, but I think you guys do craft very elegant puzzles that are meant to have clear sort of starting points that get you into the puzzle.
Malrog has a really good point in the chat that the difference between solving the variant part of a puzzle and the Sudoku part of a puzzle is the variant has clues that are telling you where to look, and the Sudoku part doesn't.
Yeah.
If you're solving a GAS and you've already finished the variant, or as much of the variant as you can, now what? You don't have anything pointing at where you're going to look. Maybe you do, but a lot of the time you don't. And so then you're just relying on how good am I at solving classic Sudoku, and everybody's at a different place.
That's true. And from a classic Sudoku technique point of view, I mean, it goes without saying that there's an absolute ceiling on the sort of thing. You're not going to be having X-wings or Y-wings or things in a GAS puzzle. So it's mostly like a pointing pairs and a naked pairs kind of, hidden pairs kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Like, I'm reluctant to say anything along the lines of GAS only ever has singles. And the reason I'm reluctant about that is maybe not what you would think, but actually because I think just from knowing how brains work, that if you say that, people are very, very likely to hear it as a singles only puzzle is gas. If you say gas only has singles, and then get confused and upset why people are reacting to this other puzzle that they set that only has singles as if it is not a gas puzzle. So I mean, I think that's right, that like gas is generally singles and pairs only. I think it's very, very important to add that doesn't mean that all or even many singles only puzzles. Yeah, and Monsoon Mike, like you've nailed it logically in the chat.
Yeah.
But when people hear you say that, like you can't control, even if they perfectly understand the logic of that statement intellectually, like you can't control where their hearts will go when they hear it.
It's funny that you went that direction with it, because my mind went a completely different direction, which is if you say a puzzle is singles only, then people are going to be looking for singles only. And they're not as likely to see the stuff that they might spot otherwise. Whether they're an expert at solving classic Sudoku or not, they're probably capable of noticing pointing pairs occasionally, even if they're not even calling them that. And if you tell them it's only singles, they're only looking for two things.
Yeah,
that's a really good point. Yeah. One thing that absolutely cracks me up, Philip, is, okay, so there are people, there are two types of gas solvers. One type of gas solver will spot an X-Wing while they're solving a gas, and gas I don't think has ever really required X-Wings, maybe like once or twice in the history of the series. But they'll spot an X-Wing and they'll celebrate. They'll say, hey, I found an X-Wing. I never noticed those. But it made a bunch of eliminations, and that's awesome. And then there are solvers who will be solving a gas and who will spot an X-Wing and say, this is an unfair puzzle because I need an X-Wing, and they shouldn't have X-Wings in gas. It's gonna be available. Like, there are gonna be a wide variety of techniques that you can use in any puzzle. Like, you know, don't.
I mean, in the Bill Sudoku that from today that Philip showed earlier, there were definitely a couple of points in that where I was like, oh, these two numbers are aligning, so that means it's up here and I know exactly where it is. And I'm like, yeah, I feel reasonably confident that that probably wasn't intended, but I noticed it and I'm going to use it. And I'm going to be like, well, this is a terrible gas puzzle because it has a X-Wing in, and that shouldn't be there.
Yeah, and there are a handful of people who will say that, basically, who will say, I don't feel like this was gas because I used a Y-Wing.
It's like, yes, you spotted it, the puzzle.
Yeah, I'll say, good job. You found a Y-Wing. Like, that's really cool. You found it. You didn't have to find it, but you found it, you know?
Yeah, and I will say, setting a classic, especially, that doesn't have any of that available is basically
that would be so impossible. Yeah. Absolutely.
The hardest thing when we did the Sudoku packs, where we were trying to require a single step.
Right.
The hardest thing is to rule out any other bypasses or any even alternate forms of an equally difficult step. And that's so hard to do. But when we're talking about things like X-Wings, there's almost always an X-Wing where there's a pair, or we talked about the Zack-Wings, right? That they're not really X-Wings, and the reason they're not really X-Wings is because they're actually claiming, and a lot of people don't even know what claiming is. Probably it's just kind of the other direction of pointing pairs.
Yep.
But it's not an X-Wing because what it's really doing is ruling out enough cells in a column or a row that what you're really left with is this is limited to these cells. And you're doing the same logic, calling it an X-Wing, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with seeing it that way.
Yep.
But you're always going to have things like that where you can see it one way or you can see it in precisely the opposite way. And they're logically equivalent. And which one you use doesn't really matter.
As long as there's something that is figure-outable and is spottable, it can still be gas.
I would also never say that we're only going to have singles and pairs because
no, that's not true.
I will immediately put in a 3-cell 6 gauge. Now you have triples.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Mine had triples. I've probably had X-wings. Like, I don't ever want to place like a hard limit on this technique is off the gas list, because like there are things that I'm 99.99% sure would not ever appear in gas, but that's not because they're banned from gas. It's not because we have a list of techniques to work from. It's because I think they're pretty incompatible with a gas style puzzle.
So no senior exercise. No senior exercise.
I'm never going to require a tri-value autogon.
Exactly.
Yeah. So just we're kind of I mean, this has been really cool discussion so far. I've been enjoying it, but I obviously don't want to keep you guys forever and a day, but just to sort of, for the last maybe quarter of an hour before we wrap it up, there were a couple of other questions. Now, I know Malrog had asked about which are you proudest of as why, but a different question from James Sinclair was, if you were to rank every gas puzzle from best to worst, which one would be exactly in the middle?
The answer for me is definitely the original Lemon Sudoku.
Okay. And do you want to elaborate why?
It's a joke answer. There's no real reason why.
I mean, obviously, we're talking like 400 puzzles. Well, no, 4 years worth of puzzles now. So, like, what, 1,400 puzzles? So it's quite a lot.
It's probably some random puzzle from like May 2023. That's just kind of forgettable.
Yep.
It's almost certainly not a puzzle we set in August. Those are either something we're proud of or something we hate. Yeah, any of those gimmicky things that we do, they're either going to be really well regarded or really not. My early puzzles, for the most part, are going to be low on the list, and then you have things like Shot Through the Heart that are going to be very high on the list, because I'm very proud of that as like this is a first truly gas variant that also does this cool thing. So yeah, it would be some random puzzle that I can't even think of because
by its very nature,
so in the middle.
It's very mid. Yeah. So yeah. Clover, did you want to add anything?
I think that I mean, I have two answers, and they're both like a little bit flippant, but they're both honest. One of them being, I think that most of my gas are essentially forgettable as individual puzzles. I think there are some I've set that are remarkable individual puzzles, and there's some that I've set that have been remarkable flops. But on the whole, I think that gas is more interesting as a project and as a style and as a community than in terms of any one puzzle being interesting. So the answer to which should be in the middle is most of them. Most of them live in the middle. Most puzzles I set for gas, I feel like I have succeeded, but I haven't blown it out of the park.
Realistically, if we were to do a tier list of gas puzzles, the vast majority would end up in the middle.
Yeah. Like it's a big, lumpy, normal curve.
Yeah.
And that is something that I could have imagined myself struggling to come to terms with early on. And I am grateful that I didn't end up really struggling with that. That's something that I got comfortable with very early, that the community responded well to, and that didn't ever really become a source of stress. And then second answer was, I'll tell you my favorite gas, which was Emergency Sudoku from, I believe, April 1st, 2022 or 2023, Philip. Do you remember?
I think it's 2022, but I'm not 100%.
Yeah, April 1st, 2022, Emergency Sudoku. And that is the single gas that I am most proud of, and that is number one on my list.
Okay. Everyone's going to be frantically Googling that now.
Yep, I'm looking it up.
I don't know that I have a favorite single gas puzzle. I am quite proud of the Triforce one recently, in large part because that was not the first version of that puzzle. I got some of the typical feedback from Bill, and also from Thomas. I think Thomas said it was a little spicy, and so I set it again and did something slightly different, but it still had the main idea. I stubbornly clung to that main idea, and it turned out to be a really beautiful puzzle. So that's a recent one that I'm proud of. It's almost certainly not my absolute favorite gas puzzle, but it's up there.
And then just on another, well, I had a thought then, and when Clover was answering, I had a thought, and it completely went out of my brain. Oh, there we go. That was it. It's back. So I guess, you mentioned gas as a community. Something you mentioned earlier was about wanting to, wishing that more sellers out there would maybe take some of these less explored variants and do stuff with them. From a broader sense, I mean, the gas, as you mentioned, is a project. It's been going for 4 years. Is there anything about gas that you kind of want people to know? Or is there anything about just the idea of gas that you kind of want to put out there to maybe encourage more people to have a go at it?
I've got an answer. Do you have an answer, Philip?
Kind of. Go ahead.
I think if I could ask for one thing, I think that my job setting gas would be a little bit easier if solvers and community members would make an effort to remember that when we started this project, we didn't start it thinking, let's lay things out with a path to success. Let's make a plan to get huge. Let's figure out exactly what the community wants and how we can do it most efficiently and how we can kind of plot everything out. Let's get big and then let's commercialize and let's make this into our day jobs. It happened by accident. And I mean, it didn't happen entirely by accident because we've worked really hard and we are talented setters and we work really, really well together and we put a lot of energy into the project. But getting as big as it got was an accident. And I think sometimes people come to me with complaints along the lines of gas is failing at its goals. And I say, well, what goals? Or they say gas is disappointing the community. And I say, well, can you lay out the nature of my obligation to the community? And the answer to that for me is maybe different from the answer that people assume. Or like I talked earlier about, people will sometimes complain based on a perception that the goal of gas is primarily to teach variant Sudoku. And we'll say, well, this isn't a very good teaching puzzle. And I think, I get so much joy from gas. I find it much more joyful than stressful. But I also think that as we've grown, this perception that we are a faceless entity that has some grand scheme to kind of grow and make money off of gas, and we have some underlying plans, has just led to almost all of the conflict that we have ever experienced in gas. And the reality is that we're just 3 friends who met on the internet, who like setting puzzles together, and who are just doing kind of a community service to give people fun puzzles that they like solving. And it's really just that, and it really only has ever been that. And I don't think gas is too big. I don't think it's gotten too big, but I do think that the more people who solve it, the more different perspectives are going to appear about what we are and what we're trying to do and what we should be and what we should be trying to do. And sometimes those don't agree with mine. And if people would maybe scoot a teeny tiny little baby step in the direction of, it's gas, it's silly, it's fun, sometimes it hits, sometimes it misses, but really it's just some people who like setting puzzles, who are sharing the puzzles they like setting with 2,000 of their best friends. Things would be even better than they are.
Yeah. My answer that I was kind of half forming is kind of similar to that. I also will clarify, this is not my day job as much as I
it's not. Oh God, yeah, it's not my day job either. And my point is,
not making that kind of money.
Nobody is trying to make this our day job, and people sometimes come at us with the perception that we are trying to make this into a growing commercial entity, which is not really a huge goal for us. We're not trying to become like YouTubers, for example.
what I would say, which goes along with this, is we are people. We are humans with our own stuff, our own feelings, our own lives outside of this. This is not as much as it might seem. I don't spend 24 hours a day setting puzzles.
You just write scripts.
I just claimed that I do. I feel like I just started talking about my Sudoku organ that spends 24 hours making puzzles, but Philip apparently doesn't. So
apparently not. Yeah, I have a family. I have 2 kids. They take up a good chunk of my time. I have a day job, and not everything that I do as a setter is going to be perfect. Not everything that I do is going to be appreciated by 100% of the solvers. I'm okay with that. Sometimes I take a little bit of joy in not quite meeting expectations. And taking on that sort of nemesis role. But really, I'm just setting puzzles because I like setting puzzles. I set the type of puzzle that I set because I like setting that type of puzzle. I stick with the aesthetics that I stick with because they make my brain happy. And not every good thing is going to land right. We're not always going to use the colors that you expect us to use. We're not going to word our rules exactly the way you want us to. And that's okay. Doesn't mean we can't do better. Doesn't mean we can't learn. I had multiple instances in August of people being confused over rules. And there was a very good reason for that. I was using somebody else's wording for the rules. But if I were to set those variants again, I would have that feedback and do something different. Yeah. But I can't go back in time and change what it looked like when I originally posted it.
It's
just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
As much as we might seem like it, sometimes we are not machines setting Sudoku. We do have feelings.
Yeah.
We are not perfect. We're not always aligned, even with each other and what we're trying to do. Never mind with all of our solvers who have very different ideas. So be gentle with us.
I was going to say
people should remember, like, they can talk to us. Like, people will say, like, oh, like this gas from 4 weeks ago, I never finished it because I was baffled by the rule set and couldn't figure it out. And, like, ping me or ping somebody else who's already solved it. Like, the community will talk to you too. It's okay.
I mean, there is a kind of a broader point that we won't go into now in the last couple of minutes of kind of, like, y'all have been doing this service for the community for 4 years, and there is that kind of thing of, well, it's part of the community. There are some people out there who say, well, this is part of the community, which means that gives me blanket right to criticize it freely and harshly when it does something I don't like, which is not the case. It's and there can be critiques of, like, I kind of got pushback on someone recently because when I posted a puzzle in testing and they said, well, saying this in the rules is inappropriate. And I was just like, it's my puzzle. I can word the rules how I want. Like, I don't appreciate that tone, But that's a, constructive criticism or, reasonable criticism. That's a whole other topic for a whole other panel. But we're closing in on the 2-hour mark. And so, as Philip mentioned, he has 2 kids. Clover, I know, has a road trip ahead of her in the coming days. And so I don't want to keep you guys much longer, but I do want to thank you both for taking the time to come and have this discussion. I, for one, very much, as I said, I go through fits and starts and phases, but I very much enjoy dipping into the gas puzzles. Just for everyone who's watching, thank you for coming, but also, as Clover mentioned, GAS has got an association with Grandmaster Puzzles now. There is also a GAS YouTube channel where they do the daily walkthrough videos, as well as posting daily in the CTC Discord. So you can get all your GAS goodness there. Do either of you have anything you want to close up with before we wrap things? Or
Subscribe to my Patreon, patreon.com/Sudoku Clover. Subscribe to Philip's Patreon. It's patreon.com/Sudoku Theory. It's actually, both of them are the same as our Twitch usernames.
Okay.
Yep.
And I have a $1 tier where you get one puzzle per month. So please come give me $1 a month and I will send you one really, really good puzzle.
I wasn't aware actually Philip had a Patreon, so I'll have to go and check that out, but I am subscribed.
He does, and it's... Philip does a much better job communicating with his patrons than I do. I kind of ping mine once a month to say, like, the puzzles have come from on high now, and just drop the puzzles into their laps.
I do a much
Philip
worse
actually
job
has community testers.
Okay. But I am subscribed to Clover's Patreon. I can certainly advocate the puzzles are well worth it. Okay, we'll wrap things up again. If people are interested in SudokuCon, please come to the SudokuCon Discord. Prof Meow has put a link in the chat. We're busy working on the venue for next year, which we hope to be announcing officially soon, and we will be having a 24-hour live stream coming up in November. Other than that, again, thanks Clover and Philip. Thank you all for watching, and
thank you.
We will see you soon.
Thanks. Bye.